I'll check.
Yeah.
I was very busy.
For you in the future, that it will be really
Okay.
meaningful. Identifying a topic, interesting topic, yeah, and then you work with it all along the okay. Yes, I think everybody really needs this. Okay, are you? Yeah, are you with us? Okay, right. We'll thank you to spend the time with us in this beautiful day, in this beautiful weekend. Yeah, okay, but not that long. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pak Will. Okay, let's start and welcome Pak Will in this webinar. Sorry, hybrid. Yeah, hybrid seminar. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Everything will be useful. Okay. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just let us just start our seminar. And this seminar will be accompanied by the PIC of the Academic Writing Center, Ibu Yusita Febrianti, as our moderator. Please welcome Ibu Yusita Febrianti.
Good morning. Thank you so much for attending this seminar both offline and online. We are very happy to be able to conduct this seminar offline right now in this room. We appreciate your attendance. We also thank our virtual participants in the Zoom room to be here with us. Everyone, we are all in the university are facing similar challenge. We are expected to be able to produce good piece of writing for various purposes. At the beginning of the semesters, at the beginning of the study program, we might be requested to
Check, here you go.
we might be requested to write essays for our assignments. At the end of the day, we'll be needing to write academic writing for various purposes again. Some of us might need to write for scriptsy. Some of us might need to write for publication as one of the requirements to complete our degree in both master's and doctoral studies. And for those who are preparing their studies to overseas universities, this is very important to prepare proposals for the further studies. Our seminar today, everyone, is an introductory seminar. But we will discuss with you all the basics of writing before we get into the academic writing. We hope that we can find insightful ideas for the basic structure of academic writing with Pak William this morning. Everybody, please welcome Pak William William.
Thank you. Dear friends, I don't usually use a microphone to speak. I usually have a big voice. I can fill this room with my voice, but I think there are Zoom people who probably want to hear more clearly, so I am using the microphone. First, I want to thank my friends and colleagues who have helped to make me comfortable here, Ibu Utari, Ibu Yusnita, and Lugi, and the Balai Bahasa staff, and very welcoming to me, very helpful. I've been here for 2 weeks now, and lots of new things for me, lots of things to adjust to, and they've made it very easy. And so now here I am making my first big presentation. I have taught a few classes. How many of you have seen me in class? Just a few? Okay. All right. Well, so this will be a repeat of some of the information perhaps that you heard from me before. I come from the United States. I was, before I came here teaching for the last 11 years at the University of Maryland, which is East Coast, Northeast Coast, and near Washington, DC. And I actually, during lockdown, the pandemic, I got really antsy. I wanted to move. I didn't want to stay at my house all the time. So I applied for this program with the State Department. And they put me here in Milan in Java, and I was very excited when I heard that news. And so here I am. And I'm bringing some basic structural ideas about English to the University of Milan. And I basically want to help as many people as I can during my 10 months here. And so I think these basics are a good way to start. If you see me in other classes, you'll see how we work with these basics. You see that we repeat these processes over and over. And the repetition is really where the learning went. In the meantime, I just wanted to let everybody know what am I here for anyway, and it starts with the structures of academic life. So, without further ado, let's start
First,
there.
deep breath.
Deep breath. Okay, so there are three basic structures as far as I'm concerned. And I use these basic structures when I'm teaching at the University of Maryland. The first one is vocabulary structure. The second one is essay structure. And the third one is sentence structure. And so from this point forward, I'll be giving you some of the general details about how these structures work and how you use them to become a more confident writer. And to me, that's really what it's all about. If you feel confident about these basic structures, then you don't have to worry about some of the other problems that come from learning English, practicing. So let's start with vocabulary structure.
All right.
There are two kinds of words in the English language. The first kind of word is the simple word.
And the simple
And the simple word is cat, dog, walk, talk,
eat, food, apple, right? These are basic words. I can't teach these words to you. You just have to learn them and know. The other kinds of words are the complex words. And these are the difficult ones. And so what we want to do is we want to recognize how these difficult words have similarities or what they have in common. And when we recognize what they have in common, then we can see that these words are like puzzle pieces. And if we understand what the pieces are doing, then we can actually work on the puzzle ourselves and really, I think, make big advances in vocabulary. Just very quick raising of hands. How many of you like studying vocabulary? Yeah, that's what I thought. One. And two. As far as I'm aware, studying vocabulary means reading words and dictionary definitions and then just remembering them. And that's okay, but there's another way, actually. So let's think about that. The parts that I'm talking about, the basic elements of the vocabulary, of the complex words of the English language are prefixes, roots, and suffixes. And I'm sure that most of you are familiar with this idea. And they teach it in America as well to 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds. This is how you do it. But they don't really make a system out of it. And that to me that's the key. So I have kind of tried to put together a system of study where if you understand some of the basic prefixes and the basic suffixes and really focus on the roots in the middle, then your vocabulary can really expand very quickly. And it will help you when you're taking tests like the TOEFL test or the IELT test, because the hope is that you will be able to take a good guess at a word, even if you don't know what it means. And that's the kind of confidence that I think, is most helpful. All right, so take a look at the list. First, we have prefixes. Prefixes, as you might take a guess, pre means anybody? Before, okay, the prefix is the first part of the word. It is the pre part, and it comes before the root, and it fixes on to the root. There are probably half a dozen or 10 or 12 more than these, but these are the most popular prefixes in the English language, and you see them again and again and again in the complex words. So if you practice with these, you learn their meaning, you know how they work in different types of words, then when you see them in a word that you don't know, it's very helpful. So we'll talk a little bit more about those. Can we go to the next one, to the roots? These are really the most important element for you to have to memorize. So we talked about memorization as a bit of a problem, but for the roots, you really do have to memorize these because this is where the strongest meaning of a complex word will come in. And if you take a look at the meanings of these various roots, you'll see that most of them are verbs. See, push, press, step, cut, hang, hold, all of them. There are a couple that have some noun connections, but pretty much all of them are verbs. So basically what that means is the roots represent some kind of action. The prefixes represent some kind of direction or time. So when you learn those basics, that helps. And again, the roots are the key feature to understanding a word that you don't know. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Can we go to the suffixes? Finally, the suffix is the last part of the word. There are also just about this many most popular suffixes. Like the prefixes, you see these again and again and again. And so if you practice with the system that I share, you will very quickly realize there aren't that many and they're used all the time. And you'll be confident and see them. So basically what a suffix will do is it will tell you what kind of a word it is, if it's a noun, a verb, or an adjective. Do you know what the suffix is for adverbs? ly, thank you very much. That's the only suffix that there is for an adverb, basically. There are some exceptions, but I don't teach adverbs. As a matter of fact, I don't even like adverbs. So if you come to a writing class with me, get ready for me to say, get rid of your adverbs. I'll explain some other time. Okay, so the suffix tells you if it's a noun, a verb, or an adjective. And it gives you a little bit of a definition. A noun is generally a condition or a state of being. The verb might be to make, and adjectives are generally relating to not that particularly important. So the key here is, well, did we pass the papers out? Thank you. So do you all have the paper in front of you? No, being passed out right now. So when you see this list of prefixes, roots, and suffixes, I do want you to think of them like puzzle pieces, because you can take them apart and mix them up and put them back together. Not that that's what we're going to do right now, but it is possible to do that. So if you can think of it that way, I think that's very helpful in terms of learning what this system is. Oh, thank you. So let's take a look at the first root that you see on that list. And there are actually 3 forms of the root. The 3 forms are vis, vid, and view. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, I know some of you don't have the paper yet, but when you get when you get it, you will see it. I promise, it's there. So vis, vid, and view are three different forms of a root that means to see. Now, just to give you a little bit of history, the vis and the vid part come from Latin, all the way back to the ancient Romans. The view part comes from the French, but all of them mean to see. Now, when I am teaching this system in my classrooms, I will ask the students, what words do you know that have vis, vid, or view in them? Now, I can't just let you shout it out, but if you would raise your hand to share just some words that you know with vis, vid, or view in them. Okay, well, invisible is a good one. What's the opposite of invisible? Visible. Okay, so we can break those words down, right? Vis is the root of it. Ibble is the suffix, and we don't have the suffix listed there, but you have the suffixes there. So ibble is an adjective that means able to. So if it's visible, you are able to see it. If it is invisible, you'll see on your prefix list, in actually has two meanings, but we know in this case, invisible means not able to see. So that's kind of a simple one. Some of the others get a little bit more complex. How about some more vis, vid, or view words? It's going to be hard for me to hear. If you raise your hands, though, don't be shy, please. Preview. Yes, preview. Pre meaning before, view meaning see. So a preview means to see before. Right? We can do this all day. And in fact, when I am working with my students, what I do is I will make a list on the board of all the words that the roots, that we can think of with those roots. And with vis, vid, and view, there are easily 20 different words, if not more. So we put those words on the board and we break them down. What is the prefix? What is the root? What is the suffix? And what do those parts mean? And we practice that, not every class, but every week. And so if I have 20 words on the board today, the next class will have a quiz about 5 of them. And I will ask you to, well, I'll write the words on the board and I'll ask you to break them down, prefix, root, suffix, and what do they mean? And we repeat this process week after week, going through that whole list of roots there. And if we do all of those roots in 15 weeks, I guarantee you easily have 500 or 600 new words in your brain, and the confidence to practice breaking down words that you don't know. In fact, many of my students come into the classroom and say, oh, I saw a word I didn't know and I broke it down, man. So to me, that's, as Ibu Utari says, that's a tip and a trick. You can unlock the general meaning of a word by knowing what the prefix, the root, and the suffix are and what those things mean. So that's one of my #1 structural analyses. That's one of the major things that I bring to this class, or to this school. So if you have a need or a desire to really work on your vocabulary, whether that's for speaking or for writing or for test taking, come see me at Bali Bahasa and we can practice that system together until you're comfortable and confident with it. So we don't have to worry about it. Okay, another deep breath. Energy. Okay, so the second and probably the most important structure that I want to introduce to you, and that I'd be happy to work with you through Bali Bahasa or through the classrooms that I'm going to be in, is essay structure. When I talk about essay structure, what I want you to understand is that I am talking about structure without content. It is not important to me what you are writing about. You could be writing about movies. You could be writing about architecture. You could be writing about building a bridge. You could be writing about sports or academic writing, which is in fact what I'm talking about. But this idea of essay structure is within all of the successful writing that I have ever seen. I go to the newspapers almost every day and I see this structure in the writing. And so the professionals are doing it. And so I want you to understand how they're doing it. And really, the structures are not that complicated. In fact, they are geometrical. I like to share the beginning of my talk about essay structure with a geometric shape, Luki, that is a hexagon. The hexagon. Does anybody know anything about hexagons? Do I have any chemistry majors in the class? No, everybody's an English major, is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. In America, there aren't so many English majors anymore, so I'm glad to see so many. So the idea of the hexagon is that this is really a basic elemental shape of nature. And you see it in all kinds of structures, and it really is a strong shape, not just for, you know, diamonds and carbon and all kinds of things like that, but for your writing. So I like to get my students thinking, a good essay is in the shape of a hexagon. So maybe we can shift to the next one. And there is essentially the breakdown of that shape for academic writing or really all kinds of professional writing. There we go. Okay. So the first thing that we do is we start small. That's that circle right at the top. That's the triangle, the beginning of the triangle of the hexagon. And the term that I like to use for the beginning is the microcosmic example. How many of you like to write introductions? Oh, again, 2. Most people don't like to do it. Why? Because it's hard. My teachers, when I was studying, they said, well, find something interesting. I don't know what's interesting. What's interesting? So I asked my teacher, what's interesting? She doesn't know either. So we have to figure out for ourselves what is interesting. Well, a microcosmic example is interesting. So I need to tell you what that is. Thinking of the prefix of the word. What is the prefix of microcosmic? Micro, thank you so much. And what does micro mean? Small. Okay, so one thing that you want to know is that a microcosmic example is small. In fact, I tell my students it's one person doing something that you are writing about. Now, the root. Does anybody know what the root of microcosmic is?
Body.
Well, what is the root itself first? What are the letters that are the root? Yes? Okay, so cosm is the root and it comes from cosmos. So what does cosmos mean?
Space.
Everything. Cosmos means everything in the world. We're part of the cosmos. The sun is part of the cosmos. The space, the universe is the cosmos. So the microcosm is the small thing that reveals the all. So for example, I am a microcosmic example of a teacher. Do you know how many teachers there are in the world? 20. No, I'm just joking. There are like 20 million, right? So I am a microcosm of that. I'm a microcosmic example of an American. I'm a microcosmic example of a man. I'm a microcosmic example of an American who has left his country. So I am many microcosmic examples, as are you. And so the trick for you is to find that one person from the subject that you're writing about. And when you find that one person, you want to tell their story in the beginning. And well, there's much more to the microcosmic example. So you have to come to my class or you have to come to Bali Bahasa, and I can help you kind of work on that a little bit more. So when you start with the microcosmic example, what you do is you hook the reader. They want to know, what is happening with this person? I want to hear their story. And then as you move forward in your introduction, and the introduction is the top of the triangle of the hexagon. The first triangle there, that's the introduction. And each step of the way after the microcosmic example, you're showing a little bit more. So the microcosmic example is a camera that's right here. Then the second paragraph is right here. And then it's here. And then, you know, the camera has the whole room. So each step of the way, if it's one paragraph or 5 paragraphs, each step of the way, you want to widen the picture out so that at the bottom of that triangle, you state your thesis. And that's listed there. Your thesis is the most important thing that the reader will be expected to remember or understand. It's the most important thing that you want to communicate. It's the widest picture of the essay. And it has 3 support points in it. So I'm just making up a thesis right now, but an examination of Americans in Indonesia reveals weather and food and language difficulties. Just making it up. And it's true too, by the way. But it's okay. So we take those 3 support points and we put those in the body paragraphs or the body of the paper. And the body then has those 1, 2, and 3. And each of those, let's call this a 5-paragraph paper. The introduction is 1 paragraph. Second paragraph is the first support point, and then all the way down. Each of those body paragraphs has a topic sentence that reminds the reader of the thesis, of the support in the thesis, and that single point is what that paragraph is going to be about. There's much more to all of this. Once you get through the body, you restate the thesis to remind the reader this is the most important point, and to let them know I'm finished with the body of the paper. And then you work backwards to the microcosmic example. So you have your camera way out here, and the next paragraph or next sentence it comes here, and the next sentence it comes here, and then it's 2, and then it's 1. So you return to what you started with. Okay, that's the basic of essay structure. Obviously, there's a lot more. If you are working on essays and you want some help, please come to Bali Bahasa. That's where I am. That's where I'm going to be able to help you to really practice with this again and again. Also, if you happen to be in one of my writing classes, this is what we will do, practicing essay structure over and over and over. Because we learn by repetition. And I think especially these structures are like tools. And the more that you use them, the better you get at them. And so that's what I'm here for. So I want to add one other thing to this essay structure introduction. I talked about the idea of structure without content. There's one other very important element of the hexagon essay structure, and that is 1-3-1. Have you heard that before? 1-3-1? Not so much. 1-3-1 means I have 1 point, I have 3 supports for it, and then I'm going to restate what my important point is. And what that means to me is that 1-3-1 is the basic structure of a paragraph. A paragraph then has 5 sentences. How many of you have been taught to write paragraphs that are more than 5 sentences? I've seen it in reality, so I think most people are very surprised. You mean I only 5? That's great. It is great, but they have to be good sentences. So we'll talk about that. But my feeling is you should try to get your paragraph done in 5 sentences. And if you're not doing that, let's talk about how to get there. So that also is essentially the introduction to essay structure. There is a lot more to it. One of the things that I tell my students to do is to read. And when you're reading, especially magazine articles or newspaper articles, you will see how a professional uses that structure to get their ideas out. That to me is a great help. If you know your essay structure, if you know that you have to write a 5-paragraph paper, and that means 25 sentences, then you know what every single sentence has to do before you even begin to write it. And maybe that doesn't strike you right now as something that will help you be more confident. But how many of you have written papers where you knew the essay, knew what every single sentence was going to do before you wrote it? Yeah, that's 0. Okay, so to me, if I can help you to get there, that is a real step in the right direction. To know beforehand what the thing is going to look like. It doesn't even matter what you're writing about. So as we practice that, that idea gets more comfortable, and like a tool, you get to be really good with it. All right. Quickly on that one, should I give some examples? Let's start with this. Yeah. So I'm going to share. Pass those backwards. I'm going to share at least one example of a 5-paragraph essay here. And I have to say, I wrote this one. I would like to have shared an example from students, but as it turns out, this is what I had. So we're sharing these with you, and you'll see that the title of this 5-paragraph essay is Writing About Writing. Are we moving that one backwards? Have you guys all got? Yeah. Okay. I haven't counted the number of sentences. Let's do that first. The first paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5. Okay. Okay, so I wrote this 5-paragraph essay as an example to share with my academic writing students in America and to introduce the 5-paragraph essay structure in a 5-paragraph essay. So that's called postmodern writing, if you're interested. So here we go. I'm going to read the first 5 sentences. That is the first paragraph. As an English teacher, that is the microcosmic example, I have read many papers written in the 5-paragraph form. Now, it would, in a best case scenario, I would actually be reading one of those paragraphs rather than talking about it, but that's a subtle difference. The 5-paragraph essay is, to me, the basic unit both of communicative writing and organized thought. And proficiency at it is what I encourage my students to imagine and work for. So when I talk about essay structure, I am, of course, talking about writing, but I'm also talking about just organizing your thinking. And I have taught many non-native speakers of English. I taught in Bangkok for a year. I taught in Istanbul, Turkey for a year. I taught in Macau, China. I taught in Nagasaki, Japan for 4 years. And I taught non-native speakers at the University of Maryland. And I tell them, we're studying English, but the subject here really is organizing your thinking. if you can get comfortable with organizing your thinking in English, then you can certainly do that in your native language as well. And I would hope that that would help you just, all around. So when I talk about the essay structure, what I really mean is organizing your thinking. And I think, everybody improves when they do that. So yet, especially at the beginning of the term, 5-paragraph essays are difficult to produce. Recent experience has shown me that the difficulty can be eased with a better understanding of the foundation of the 5-paragraph essay, the thesis statement. My belief is that with a more finely crafted thesis statement containing a topic, an opinion, and 3 support points in one sentence, students will take the next step to perfection in their quest for better writing. How many of you have had trouble writing thesis statements in your experience? That's more than 2. Yeah, it's no surprise. It's a big deal, right? You want to say a lot in a short period of time or a short space. So the thesis statement, is just one of the tools that you want to practice with to make a better essay. So first, thesis statements must inform the reader of the topic of the paper. Now, the reason that I'm stopping here is that I want you to understand that that is a topic sentence. And the topic sentence is there to remind the reader of the support points from the thesis. So let's go back to that thesis. It says a finely crafted thesis statement containing a topic. So the topic is the #1 point of the thesis, and it is the #1 topic of the body paragraph. This is not too difficult for students. They easily understand they have to have a topic to write about. However, often they don't realize that it is their responsibility as a writer to indicate to the reader exactly what their topic is in whatever way possible. An attention-grabbing introduction will give the reader a hint, but the writer must state clearly, for example, a vivid memory or a life-changing event or a traumatic incident in my life, so that the reader will have no question of exactly what the writer is talking about. So in this paragraph, the topic is the topic sentence or the thesis statement. So again, that can be maybe a little confusing, but the purpose of that paragraph is to tell the reader how the topic of a thesis statement is important. Secondly, students must share their So what I'm saying is, as you see in the thesis, a topic, an opinion, and 3 support points. So those are the topics of the body paragraphs. The second body paragraph is talking about the opinion. Now, that one, let's just read. The opinion is a little more conceptually challenging. I have seen students overthink the opinion, or especially in a narrative essay, believe they have expressed their opinion as they reveal the chronology of their fateful story. However, like the topic, the opinion can be stated rather simply. So it's not necessarily your opinion, but it is an opinion. And when you write in an academic setting, if you're writing an academic paper, really, you don't want to have a strong opinion, but you want to indicate to the reader that there are opinions that people have. So that if you were taking the class with me, we would talk a lot more about that particular point. So, however, like the topic, did I set that already? Did I? The opinion can be stated rather simply. Adults don't take children seriously. Felt like a stranger. To appreciate the simple things in life was meaningful to me. Those are examples of opinions. Lots more to say about that subject. And it is important to share that opinion with the reader. Otherwise, the reader is not sure of what perspective they are to take in viewing the story the writer is conveying. So you would have to, I think, we would have to talk about how the opinion works in a thesis statement, I think, again and again. But if there are any questions about that, we can address them in a little bit. Thirdly, this seems to be the hardest of all, students must share their main organizing principles with the reader in their 3 support points. So the support points in the thesis are the organizing principles of the body paragraphs. The 3 support points guide the reader around the foundation of the essay, from one angle of consideration to the next. We can see the topic from before, during, and after, or the size of the airport, the diversity of the ethnicities, and the ways in which some of the public services work, or differences in food, sporting events, and holidays, or the home I live in, love, and most importantly, family unity, or showed me dancing techniques, building friendships, and keeping my grades up. Each one of these quotations has 3 support points, and each of those points would be addressed in the body paragraphs of the paper. These support points do not only help the reader, they will guide the student writer organizing the body paragraphs, which present more complete details about each support point in the thesis. Meaning, if you have a good 3 support points and you put them at the topic of each of the body paragraphs, then you know very clearly what you need to write about, and you don't need to make stuff up, and you can get it done in 5 sentences. So, returning to the conclusion here, you'll see that I have not exactly structured this in the same way as the shape of a hexagon, but that's okay. It still works. Grappling with the conceptual and practical issues of solid thesis statements is not simply a matter of passing English 101 or academic writing. A person must boil their thought down into comprehensible and organized sentences every day of their lives. It is something that comes in time and with a habit that develops through practice. Writing is a process, and repeated practice will bring improved results. And then the last sentence is actually the thesis. It should be at the top of the paragraph, but in this case, I didn't do it that way. That is why I feel compelled to reiterate that with improved thesis statements, which clearly express their topic, 1, the opinion of the writer, 2, and 3 support points, 3, students will feel more confident control over their writing and their ability to communicate with others. Oh my goodness. Take questions? Should I take questions now? Does anybody have any questions they want to ask right off the bat? Okay, that's fine. I will then remind you that I think of the 3 structures that I am presenting to you today, essay structure is probably the most important one. Vocabulary structure, of course, is very helpful for you to communicate, but essay structure is helpful for you to think. And there's no question in my mind that what I have said to you right now is just the beginning. There is so much more to do, and I'm here to help share those more details with you. So anytime you're having questions or difficulty writing, contact us at Bali Bahasa, and I can sit down with you and we can really go into these details to help you get better as a writer. This is a 5-paragraph paper, but this idea of 1-3-1 structure actually works at all levels. So 1-3-1 is for 1 paragraph, 5 sentences. 1-3-1 is good for 5 paragraphs, 1 paragraph of introduction, 3 body, and 1 conclusion. It's good for 10 paragraphs, 2-6-2. It's good for 20 paragraphs, 4-12-4. It's good for 100 paragraphs. 20-60-20. Okay. So this idea of essay structure and 1-3-1 in particular, it's like a ratio that you can use in mathematics. And I can't help but think that these concepts are very helpful. There's tricks and tips that can help you to become better writers just by being aware. Okay. Another deep breath. And finally, the 3rd structure is sentence structure. How many of you like writing sentences? It's hard, I know. And it's hard for, for an English speaker. I've been writing sentences for 40 years and I still have to, I still have to work at it. So one of the things I tell my students is if we have class for 15 weeks, I cannot teach you everything there is about sentence structure. It's not possible. Really, you are your best teacher because you have to be aware of when you wrote badly and to try to correct it. But what I tell my students when I say I can't help you with everything, I can help you with 3 basic structures of sentence writing, and we will repeat these over and over again in the classroom, or if you come to see me at Balai Bahasa, I will repeat these 3 things over and over again. And I don't know if we have written them down. We haven't, have we? Okay. The 3 basic sentence structure rules are: number 1, strong subjects. Number 2, action verbs. And number 3, compression. I do recommend writing that down, and I do recommend memorizing that because if of the things that I'm going to present to you today, I think that's the most immediate thing that you can grasp and understand and put into practice. Now, when I say strong subject, what do I mean? I'm sorry? I don't. Say again? I am a strong subject. That's true. However, when you are at the university and you are working on an academic paper, I generally is not part of it. So now you're at the university and I am not the center of the world anymore. I am looking from outside. So I is an excellent one, except if it's not I, it's people. Well, any person is a strong subject. Bob, Joe, Sally, Jane, all of those are strong subject. Why? Because they can take action. So action verbs. Strong subjects means essentially people. Action verbs means doing something. Now that might seem simple to you, but I know all of you are told you must write a 5-page paper or a 10-page paper. And the first thing you think is, I need more words. And I have to look like I know what I'm talking about. So I make these long sentences that have the big words just to fill up the page. And I have to say, dear friends, that horrifies me as a teacher. I have to get my students to kind of unlearn that. I never talk about number of pages. I never talk about number of words, never. I talk about the number of paragraphs. Because if I talk about the paragraphs, then you know what the structure has to be. And again, you know what every sentence has to do. So the idea of pages and word count, to me, that's just I don't want to throw my fellow teachers under the bus, but do you know what I mean when I say under the bus? That's an idiomatic saying. Under the bus means like put them in trouble or make them look bad. And I don't want to do that, but to me, the key is that you know what the structure should be before you begin writing, and page numbers and word count don't do that. So when I give you an assignment, it's 5 paragraphs or 10 paragraphs or something like that. Another deep breath. Sentence structure starts with strong subjects and it continues with action verbs. And when you have strong subjects and action verbs, the third result is natural compression. So compression means fewer words equals more power. Because your purpose as a writer is to communicate as directly as you can from your mind to the reader's mind. And when you have the big long sentences that have the big long words and nobody knows what you're talking about, that doesn't help. So 5 sentences per paragraph with strong subjects, action verbs that are compressed, that speaks directly to the reader. The reader can understand, and that's really what you want. You don't want to sound like you know what you're talking about. You want to know what you're talking about. And so actually writing simpler sentences is something that many, of my American students as well, they have to practice. They're used to writing words or sentences and that they don't communicate. Now, I have given you some examples. If you flip over, I think the prefixes, roots, and suffixes, there are 3 sentences there. Yeah, those. Prefixes, roots, and suffixes. Sorry, it's the 3 sentences. Yeah, here. Okay, so the first one here says, the issue of torture does not only determine persons' human right, but torture also examines the struggles of legislation, nation, security, and humanity in American society. Anybody understand what that means? I think we're talking about torture, right? Why do we know that? Because the word is mentioned twice. I always tell my students, never mention the same word twice in one sentence. Why? Because the reader is thinking, well, if you want me to understand the word, why are you telling it to me twice? One time equals more power. So that's just one example. Compression will mean we're going to take that second torture out of there. But is there a strong subject in this sentence? Is there an I or a people? No, it's the issue of torture. The issue of torture is not a strong subject. Why? You get an A for today. The issue of torture cannot take action. Torture itself is the action. Okay? So when we talk about the issue, that's not a strong subject. We need a person there, and we need that person doing something. So I don't mean to correct this sentence right here, right now, but I just want you to see why it's bad. There is no strong subject. I guess we do have an action verb, determine, but again, torture cannot determine anything. And then the next part of the sentence says, torture also examines. Is that true? Does torture examine? Who examines? People. Right, so we have to put the people first, and then we can work with that. So who is examining torture? Lawyers, just for example. Lawyers are people who might examine the problems of torture. Okay, so again, that sentence does not have a strong subject. It does not have an action verb, or at least a good one, and it does not have compression. So the second one, social relations are also concerned with the geographical distribution of different people. I mean, what if I came here today and started to talk to you like that? Social relations are also concerned with the geographical distribution of different people. I mean, you would all be asleep by now because you would not understand a single thing that I've said. So this is in what we call in English a word salad. It's just like throwing words out there, and maybe they work and maybe they don't. It doesn't matter. And that is not what I teach, dear friends. If you are my students, you will not present me with word salads. So, social relations are also concerned with the geographical distribution of different people. This is what I call a clunker. And if you are to take classes with me, or if you sit with me at Bali Bahasa, I will look for these clunker sentences in your writing. And I will say, let's take this bad sentence and try to make it good. And we will do that by strong subjects, action verbs, and compression. I'm not going to do that right here with this one, but I think we could. Third one. Put my glasses on for this one. Open border policies will decide whether letting other countries' refugees enter Germany's territory or not, while the open door policy will decide whether letting asylum seekers enter Germany or not? Your mind wants to understand. Really, as a reader, you want to think, okay, that makes sense. But when you look at it, it makes no sense at all. You cannot make sense out of it. And so that's why I call it a clunker. It starts off like, okay, I'm going to understand this in a right? I don't understand it. So it's up to the writer to get that point across. It's not up to the reader to figure out what the word salad is. It's up to the writer to be direct. This is my subject, this is the action, and I'm giving it to you in a compressed way. So those are three examples. I have actually gathered enough of those clunkers to write a book. And I tell my students, I'm going to put you in my book. So be careful when you're writing for me. But then my students say, well, you have to get my legal agreement to do that. So that's why the book has not been published yet. So you're not really in any danger. But what I think what I really want to tell you about clunkers is that every single student produces clunkers. Everyone. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, they are funny. If I had if I had the time, I would share pages and pages of clunkers. We would be crying tears of hilarity because they are crazy. I think many students write at 2 o'clock in the morning. How many of you students stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning and write? Clunker. You're gonna have a whole page of clunkers. So I tell my students, don't write late. That's not so good. But a clunker to me is a first draft. Okay, write whatever you want. 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, write what comes out of your head. Don't stop that. That's good. That's fine. But when the sentence is written, after it's done, then you go back. Strong subjects, action verbs, compression. And that way, the first draft is fill out the essay structure. You have 25 sentences to write, write them. Put them where they belong. Then when it's done, go at it the second time. That's your second draft, and polish those sentences and make them better. Okay, so that's the basic introduction to the things that I bring as a teacher and as a tutor here to the University of Milan. I generally think, and I have found in my time as a teacher, that everybody can improve all of these: vocabulary structure, essay structure, and sentence structure. So if you find yourself in a position where, like, I don't know where I'm going, or I don't know how to move forward, that's when you can come to me or the other tutors at Balai Bahasa. So I guess that's basically my presentation. I think I've done it in about an hour. Thank you. But I think we have time for questions? Yes. 10, 15. It's up to you. I don't make up the questions here, so don't be shy. I'm not shy. I came here all the way from America. Do you know how long it is to fly from America? 17. Longer. 12 and a half hours from DC to Doha. I spent 8 hours at the Doha airport, and then another 10 hours to Jakarta, and then another hour and a half to Milan. So I've just gotten over the jet lag now.
So I think we're going to open question and answer for this session. We have about 20-ish minutes for the question and answer. If you want to ask questions, please raise your hand.
Yeah.
And if Luki, please have a look if our virtual participants would like to ask questions as well.
We have a brave soul who wants to ask a question.
A brave soul, but a poor writer.
But being brave is one of the key features of becoming a better writer. So you still win.
Thank you, Pak Will. I'm still working on my introduction. And one of my professors asked me to rewrite again. It has been like 3 times or 4. Now, my question is relating to your very practical tips. So What is your suggestion for thesis writing? I mean, is it does the one-to-one applies to introduction and literature review, theoretical framework, and then method finding and what's that? Another one, discussion. Because one of my most issues, I'm writing a book.
How long is your paper going to be?
I don't know. It's around. It does not say exactly the word unit, but as long as it makes sense.
80 pages? 50?
Yeah, could be 50 up to 70, something.
Okay.
Like that.
So we're talking about 100 paragraphs, give or take a little bit. Basically, a 25 paragraph paper is 8 pages. Could be a little more, could be a little less. So if we're saying 50 to 80 pages, I would say, let's just say 100 paragraphs. So 100 paragraphs to me means 20 paragraphs of introduction and 60 of the body and 20 of conclusion. And I personally have not written that many long, essays. So that would be a challenge. But the same principles, I think, apply. And you're talking about method and discussion, and that's a kind of a structure that, that's more like the academic culture of Indonesia, and I can't change that. And so I don't necessarily want to say throw that away. That's no good. But if there's a way to bring method and discussion into your thesis, into your introduction, I think we could do that. But start small. What's the topic?
It's about self-efficacy.
In study?
Yeah, for doctoral students overseas.
Yeah. So, again, you could use yourself as a microcosmic example, but you could also research somebody who is going through this process and find them and tell their story. So the first maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs might be about that person and their study, but then who is that person's advisor? And bring that person's advisor in for the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th paragraphs. What's going on in that department that they're studying there? So now you have 4 or 5 paragraphs that are related to the department. Then you can talk about the school, right? So in that case, 4 paragraphs about the person, 4 paragraphs about the advisor, 4 paragraphs about the department, 4 paragraphs about the school, and now you're at 16 paragraphs. So then you might situate the school in relation to the whole country. And then your thesis is an examination of self-efficacy in the study of English language in Indonesia reveals the importance of, and that's your thesis. So just here and now, that's the way that I might say, go for that. One thing I would recommend that you be thinking about with your microcosmic example is that you're telling a story. So don't finish telling the story in introduction. Save the last part of the story for the conclusion. So there are a lot of ways to work with that. And if we were to sit down together, I'm sure we could kind of practice that and work it out. But to my mind, we can get a structure if you'd like some assistance. Okay, don't be shy. You're welcome. Anybody else? Please, please. Oh, here comes the microphone, and then we'll get you afterwards.
Thank you so much for the chance. Actually, I'd like to ask related to graduate thesis in chapter 1, that is introduction or background of the study. Ideally, how many paragraphs should be written? Because I have heard an opinion stating that it lasts for 10 pages usually, but others say that it is enough for 2 or 3 pages. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. I don't really know any exact answer. I just imagine that in some countries it's one way, it's just a cultural, educational sort of issue. So I do worry sometimes that I'm gonna come here and say, this is the way to do it, and it must be done this way, and then it doesn't really apply to your experience. So I don't want to insist. But one, the first question that I have is, how long is your graduate thesis supposed to be total? There's no limit. It could go on forever. You'd never graduate then. Well, okay, so what I would say is that the chapter 1, it should be in relation to the rest, right? Don't write a 10-page introduction if the rest of the paper is 20 pages. That's out of balance. So the balance should be 1, 3, 1. So if the body paragraphs or the body chapters, there's 10 chapters in the body, then 2 or 3 chapters of introduction. Or excuse me, 2 or 3 pages of, I would have to see it to know, but I mean, if we're saying there are 10, just get confused by the numbers. How long should the chapter be if there are 10 chapters of body? I would think something like, 10, 15 pages, but I would have to, I would just have to see it in practice. The key is if there's 10 body paragraphs, then maybe it's not just one chapter of introduction. Maybe there's one chapter about you or the microcosmic example, but then there's another chapter that's that widening out, right? So other microcosmic examples, you have a patient who goes to the hospital. That's dramatic. That's a story that will hook the reader. So you bring the patient to the hospital in the first chapter. The second chapter, you have the patient working with the doctor. So you talked about the doctor's experience. The doctor has more than one patient. So then you talk about that department in the hospital. And then you talk about the whole hospital. And then you talk about the state or the country. So that's what I mean by proportion, right? Maybe you don't need just one chapter. Maybe there's more than one chapter. But anytime you want to come to Bali Bahasa or organize to sit with me, then we can kind of really talk specifically about it. There's one question a little further back. Coming down from behind you.
Should I say?
Oh, whatever you like, I can hear you.
Okay then. So you mentioned that in the sentence structure, you mentioned that the 3 main things, for example, strong subject, and then action verb, then expression, right? And then I want to ask, are there any exceptions to these 3 rules? And if so, which should I use it? Maybe in 3 different?
Oh my goodness. I'm not really talking about creative writing. However, if you were a creative writer and you wrote those sentences that I shared with you, nobody would publish that. It's word salad, right? So, but I am not talking about creative writing. Yes, there are exceptions. The better you get at writing strong subjects, action verbs, and compression, the more you can break the rules. Do it with structure. And here's my example. How many of you are familiar with the Beatles? Rock and roll band, the Beatles? Please raise your hand so that I can know. This is just a test of how old I am. There was a time where everybody in the world knew who the Beatles were. The reason that they knew who the Beatles were was the Beatles wrote songs that had a structure that was almost perfect. The introduction, verse, refrain, break, refrain, verse. I mean, it was just beautiful. They knew how to do 1-3-1 structure perfectly. They were brilliant at it. Then they were so good at it that they changed it and blew it up and turned it around upside down. And that's not what I'm talking about. Be the Beatles in the first few years. And then, once you get really good at that structure, then you will have a lot more freedom to break the rules. And I certainly don't object to that at all. But I think the best writers are the ones who have that structure in there, but you can't really see it. But at this point, you know, academic writing in college, to my mind, focus on the structure. Once you get the tools and the techniques down, then after you do that, then you become a lot more free and easy, and you can break the rules, right? Not every sentence has to have a strong subject, an action, verb, and compression. Sometimes it works otherwise. But here in my classes and the instruction that I'm talking about, let's focus on that structure first. Other questions, don't be shy. It's right next to the last question.
Thank you, Mr. Will, for the opportunity. My name is Aulia, and I would like to ask, thank you.
Strong subjects, action verbs, and compression. The other thing is research, right? The better you know your subject, the more coherent you're going to be. Research is really a significant part of academic writing. When I teach it, I really do spend a lot of time talking to students about what are good sources, how do you take from the source the information that is best for you, avoiding plagiarism, that sort of thing. And then the other thing is just practice. There is no magic, no magic beans, no magic wand, no magic to becoming more coherent. But if you know that you need to be coherent, then that's a step in the right direction. So practice, practice, practice. Strong subjects, action verbs, and compression. Thank you, Aaliyah. Thank you. Other questions? Is there anything from the Zoom? There are eight points in the chat. Let's see. Come on.
Yeah.
No questions.
Yeah. So, one last question, maybe?
We were basically here for 9 minutes, so.
May I ask any questions?
Silly questions are fun.
This is actually silly, but I don't know whether it sounds okay right now.
You would like to, not me, but I tend to use some verbs that sounds sophisticated to win the journal editor. That probably my paper could be published in their journal. But then one of my friends said, don't use that kind of way because people might accept you are second language writer. But then I said, but then it does not look like English writing. So one of the things that I do is that I copy some of the verbs from the other journal article, and I list it, and I find the meaning, and then I chop, and then I rewrite my sentences to sound a little bit sounds English.
Less sophisticated. So to me, the word that I used earlier is direct. Right? And so if you can use a simpler verb to be more direct, without having read anything, I would say that's a pretty good rule, right? What I find is students who try to go too far, they become incoherent. So being more direct means in some ways being more simple. But if you want to get published, you do have to sound good. So what I would say is keep a thesaurus nearby The thesaurus is a dictionary of synonyms and practice with it. But, there was a period of time where I did the same thing. I tried to write more sophisticated words. I tried to, make it look like I was smarter than I actually am. Which is easy to do. And so it wasn't me, it didn't really work out. So it's good to push yourself with your vocabulary, and it is good to try to find the sophisticated words, but unless they really work, they reveal kind of an emptiness that's not so good. So first, I would say, nail down your structure, nail down your directness, and that's what people really respond to. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we hit it at 90 minutes. Perfect. I appreciate your giving me your time and being here. Thank you. I didn't have to be here.
Thank you again for everyone, all our participants, both offline and online at our virtual Zoom room. We welcome you to register with the Academic Writing Center for your needs in academic writing, especially your tasks for your assignments and your scripture and your thesis for dissertation. You can get information about our registration forms by visiting us in our Instagram, our WhatsApp, and you can also visit us at Jalan Salatiga number 2A. We will be waiting for you. Thank you so much for your attendance today. Once again, big round of applause for Fawil. See you again in our regular seminar, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me know if I can help.
Thank you so much.
Yes, there will be. Hello. Some sentences. I don't
Saya bisa ikut kelas writing di Jawa
Right. I guess that depends on. Like, you were writing, I think that was that what you're talking about. Say there's personal stuff. To your, let's say, you're trying to interpret. Much of that is just take it out. I couldn't say right here. Right now.
Ini tak cabut tiga deh.
Oh, nggak usah dulu, nggak apa-apa, Mem. Nanti saya ringkesnya. Aman. Ini ambilin ABC aja. Pulang hari ini kita. Naik apa? Kereta dong. Naik
Generally control teaching during
Makes our relation deeper.
Yeah, I mean, sitting down with me at that point, we could talk about that too. Just very quickly.